bad memory about that. How's everyone doing this morning? It's better than usual. I mean, in terms of your tone and everything, like I might have partially believed that one. So I'm going to go ahead and pray. So Lord, I just thank you. I thank you for today, God. I thank you for waking me up this morning. I thank you for waking me up this morning in this place where you have set me and put me for this season of my life. The things that you have poured out without me even looking. God, I thank you for your grace and your mercy that is new every single day, because you know I need it. God, I just thank you. I pray, amen. Let's see here. So, who likes getting told no? Smack your hand. No. That's just, even like you think about Ellie, right? Tell her no. Like the other day I was over there painting chairs in front of the house, and she came over, hey, can I help? And, of course, she's just, and Kelly was just like, hey, let's go back over, got to change little sister's diaper, and, you've got to get some water, and da-da-da, and she's, no, she's 4, right? Like, it's a thing, and, it's okay. Eventually she goes over there, but, the words no never came out of Kelly's mouth, right? But she was giving instruction, like, let's go back to the house. Like, so that's an implied, no, we're not going to continue painting right now. Because, of course, Kelly was like, I was like, yeah, of course she can come back, after you get things settled and all that kind of stuff. So, but my point is, Kelly didn't come out and say, no, you can't paint right now. She said, let's go do this first, and then we can come back to that. So that's an implied, no, you can't paint right now, right? But what got me thinking about it is, I know I had shared in praise reports the other day, not the other day, it was a couple weeks ago, honestly. And Jeremiah, welcome. Welcome. We are really glad to have you, man. But when I shared that I was really grateful that I got told no in a lot of things. Because that's a big part of what's brought me to where I am now. I'm glad that my parents cut me off, and they said no. I'm glad they changed the locks on the door, the code to the door. I'm glad they said no, you can't come in the house. Because those things pushed me and helped me get to the point of brokenness where I had to be. Where, yeah, in the face of those no's, I made really terrible decisions and got where I was. But they didn't enable me, right? And I know I've shared this story several times, but the reason I do is because it was a turning point in my faith, right? It was my second time through, and I had just become AC, and some things had come to light, things that were going on at home. Because before then, I still wasn't allowed in the house because I had not reconciled with my dad yet. So whenever I would go home to Knoxville, my mom would rent a hotel room, and we'd stay in the hotel room in Knoxville, right? 2 miles away from my parents' house. And but once some things came to light, once I became an AC, first of all, I was honest with my spiritual covering and told them what was going on, number one. I didn't hide that stuff. And so because of that, I was no longer allowed to go home for the weekends. And the way it was said to me, it wasn't this, no, you can't go home anymore, right? It was, why don't you spend your weekends here, right? Your mom can come and she can stay the weekend with you, 1 weekend a month. You guys can still spend time together. But in the face of that, you still hear that no, right? You still hear that, no, I can't go home. And there was, I can't even remember what they were, but it was like a string of things like that were essentially no's, right? When actually looking at it from a better perspective, those were no's for my protection, right? But, it brought me to a point, and I've told the story of me standing out there in between this building and the brother's house and just bawling my eyes out and like lifting my hands to the sky and going, God, whatever this is for, I have to have faith that you're trying to produce something in me. Humility, faith in you. The true cost of being a disciple. That even if I don't get to go home, and even if I don't, which it's and by the way, since that point in time, I have spent one night in Knoxville in 4 years. And that's the night that Travis and I went and stayed the night when my dad had his last stroke a few months ago. So I've spent one night in Knoxville since then, have not missed it, y'all. There's nothing to miss. There's nothing to miss, except for McKay's, if anybody's from Knoxville. Or Nashville, because there's one there. So what I'm essentially, the point that I'm trying to make here is no's are good for us, right? Because we spend our entire lives getting what we want, manipulating to get what we want. And to be completely honest, I had spent my entire life manipulating my mother. She's a very emotional person. She's a very giving person. Like a lot of parents, she would do anything for her baby girl, right? Her baby girl's about to be 36 years old, but, but the thing is, I used that to get what I wanted. And thank God, she had my dad behind her going, no, you can't keep giving her these things. No, we have to change the code on the lock. No, you can't keep doing these things for her. But it's the same when you actually look at the word, right? Because going through, just kind of thinking about it, I couldn't really call to memory anywhere where God, just said no, right? God gives commands, and anything outside of that is an implied no, right? Don't eat the fruit off of this tree in the center of the garden. But people like us were like, well, what if I just take one bite? Surely that's not going to kill me, right? And we search and we seek out the answer that we want to get to kind of create a loophole to get what we've already been told we should not do, right? One thing, that was a big one, obviously. But the next one that came to mind is, let me try to find the scripture. I've got them all written down. So 1 Samuel 8. Right? And this is when the people ask for a king. Right? Everybody does understand that God intended for him to be our king. For him to rule us and guide us. But there had been a period in time where the judges in Israel were falling short, to put it mildly. And mainly they were complaining about the prophet Samuel's sons. They were nothing like Samuel, and just kind of shady, right? And so they go to Samuel and they plead with him, please, anoint us a king. Like other countries have, like other people have. I want what they have, right? Instead of recognizing that they're the chosen people of God, and that he is intended to be their king, they want something that everybody else has, something worldly that everybody else has, right? And so Samuel goes to God, because Samuel knows that this isn't right, right? So he goes to God and he's like, what am I supposed to do, right? And God says, it's in verse 7, you're not the one they've rejected. I'm the one they have rejected as their king. All right? So God's like, they're not turning away from you. They have rejected me as their king, right? I've done all of these things for them to show them who I am, and they still want something that everybody else has, because that looks better for some reason. I don't know. That turns out to be not so well, or not so good. And you go down the lines of kings, and of course, yeah, there's, and for a fraction of time, Saul was a decent king in some aspects, I'm sure. But then, you've got David, and yeah, had his faults, but he was a good king. And this is the line that Jesus came from, like David. You've got Solomon, all this. So, there weren't bad kings. That's not what I'm saying. But they wanted second best to what was intended for them. Right? They went outside of what God had said. And then you turn to, and well, I just said Saul was sometimes a good king, but not really giving him any credit here. So if you go to 1 Samuel chapter 15, so this is when Saul is going to war with the Amalekites. And God literally says, if we go to 15, verse 3, don't leave a thing. Kill all the men, women, children, and babies, the cattle, sheep, camels, and donkeys. So God says, kill everything, right? So anything outside of that command is an implied no, right? But what does Saul do? He captured the king alive, and did not kill the best sheep, cattle, and the best calves and lambs, or anything else that was good. They destroyed only what was useless and worthless. And then you jump down to verse 11. And God is actually talking to Samuel, and he says, I'm sorry that I made Saul king. He has turned away from me and disobeyed my commands. And this is where God rejects Saul as king, because he went outside his commands. And Saul uses excuses like, but I was gonna sacrifice this cattle to you. That's why I saved the best. And God says, that's not what I had said. That's not what I told you to do. So just because you think you're doing okay, that's not what I told you to do. Just because it sounds good to other ears and it makes you look all holy, like, but isn't this the right thing? I'm making a sacrifice to you. No, because that's not what I said. The Lord prefers obedience over sacrifice. Right? Our obedience is our sacrifice. There's so many more points. Oh, yeah, so, and I do love Proverbs. Proverbs 16:2. You may think what you do is right, but the Lord judges your motives. Proverbs 16:9. You may make your plans, but God directs your path. And the thing about that is, the Lord has to be your Lord for him to direct your path. Like, yes, he directed all of our paths here because we had reached that bottom, that rock bottom, right? And we cried out to him, whether we did it verbally and we said, God, like we're sitting in a jail cell and said, God, like if you'll just get me out of this, or if you're sitting at home, like detoxing or whatever the case may be, and you're at that bottom and just go, God, I can't do this anymore. Like, and you cry out to him, or the Spirit intercedes. Like, I barely remember making the call to put in my application. There is nothing in me there's no part of me that would have made the call, right? That was the Spirit interceding for me. So whenever so he brings us here, right? And, he brings us to a place that has a set amount of time, right? That's another command, right? That's another direction. That's another guide, right? And so whenever we step outside of that, and we say, oh, well, God said it's okay. No, he didn't, because he brought you to a place in a set time, right? So anything outside of that is disobedience, right? When we make a commitment to something, right? And even if any of you guys stay for staff, some of you guys have, and you're told ahead of time, like, it's this amount of time, right? That is making another commitment, right? You've already adhered to the basic 8 to 10 months, right? Congratulations, right? You've dipped your toe in the water. But what the next steps, and not just this program, but whenever you commit yourself to anything, you are letting the Spirit lead you. And the point of being here is so that you can start growing in the Lord, so you can start growing your discernment, so you can properly hear His voice, right? And sometimes you don't hear His voice, right? Like after Overseer, whenever I was praying about whether I should stay for ARD, and he said, step out. And I don't, like, it wasn't like a verbal thing. Like you can like, you feel it in your spirit, right? And he said, step out, right? And he by no means meant step out of the mission, right? I'd gone through a lot of codependency issues. And again, I was really good at doing things, really good at getting stuff done, right? Give me a list, I'll have it done in half the time, right? And do it well. I had defined myself by my mantles here. I'm the overseer, I'm the senior, I'm the dean, I'm the head ST, I'm the whatever, right? So this was a period in time where he needed me to step out in faith, in him, remain where I am, and find out who I am in him. Because after all that time, after going through overseer, I still didn't have confidence in who I was in him. I still determined who I was based off of other people, off of other humans, right? The main point that I'm trying to get to is getting told no, or understanding the guidelines and the commands that the Lord gives us and not stepping out of those. That humbles us. Not doing what we want to do, right? Because what I want to do is dangerous. What I want to do is going to kill me. So if I step outside of what he tells me to do, I'm out from under his covering. I'm out from under his protection. Because I'm just going to do what I want to do. Right? And also, like, getting getting told no out there, yes, it like I said, it was a turning point in my faith because it forced me to make a decision. They're doing this for my protection. They're doing this because they care for me. And so whenever I looked up at the sky and got up at the sky and said, God, whatever this is going to produce in me, whatever you need me to have, it produced humility. It produced making him first. Not seeking out my own wants and needs and putting that at the top of the list. Putting others before myself. Because then through my mom coming here every weekend, and because we can tell our families all day long about what we do here and what it's like to live here and everything, but they're never going to grasp it. Like you can't grasp the mission until you're in the mission. But her coming here and seeing how we interacted and how much love there was, and that it wasn't just me, right? Like I'm not special. Like the things that this program allows to grow in you, if you allow it, and grows you closer to the Lord, like that wasn't just for her little baby girl. That was for everybody else here. That was for all the other women in the women's house, And same with the brothers. Just she spent more time with the sisters. Sorry. A lot of thoughts, but, putting them into actual words is difficult sometimes. So what I wanted to read to you guys, and this is the Message translation that I've been digging into. I can't do King James version. I just can't. So this is in Luke 14, starting in 25. One day when large groups of people were walking along with him, Jesus turned and told them, "Anyone who comes to me but refuses to let go of father, mother, spouse, children, brothers, sisters, yes, even one's own self, can't be my disciple. Anyone who won't shoulder his own cross and follow behind me can't be my disciple. Is there anyone here who, planning to build a new house, doesn't first sit down and figure the costs so you'll know if you can complete it?" So going through the 8 to 10 month program, like, I know they're hard days. I'm not debating that, right? But in all actuality, it's a blessing, right? The work isn't all that hard. Your consequences for things are, losing cigarettes, which kill you anyway, so you're mad about that. Or digging into Scripture, and hopefully you're praying before you do that, and finding out more about yourself, finding out more about what needs to be cleaned out, right? But my point is, like, there's not much really to weigh and see what the cost is when you're coming into the 8 to 10 month program, right? Like, I'm going to get sober. I'm going to, and I know that's all of our initial thoughts. Like, I'm going to get sober. I'm going to get clean, right? But then it becomes something more as you go throughout the program. But the point that I'm getting at is there's not really much to debate or weigh when you're coming into the residential program. When we give the offer to stay for staff, we give you 3 days to pray, so you can weigh the cost, so you can see how that pans out. If you only get the foundation laid and then run out of money, you're going to look pretty foolish. Everyone passing by will poke fun at you. He started something he couldn't finish. Or can you imagine a king going into battle against another king without first deciding whether it's possible with his 10,000 troops to face the 20,000 troops of the other? And if he decides he can't, won't he send an emissary and work out a truce? Simply put, if you're not willing to take what is dearest to you, whether plans or people, and kiss it goodbye, you can't be my disciple. Salt is excellent, but if the salt goes flat, it's useless, good for nothing. When you're told no, think of it as an opportunity. Weigh things out. Is me causing a hissy fit going to get me what I want? Not here. Let me tell you that straight up. No. No. It's not. I'm not your mama. And personally, I know what those no's produce. Most of the staff here does too. Right? We've seen the fruit of that. We've seen the fruit of obeying that implied no, of not going outside of his commands, of the rules and guidelines. Let's put it in like everyday, verbiage that you can understand for today. Follow the rules and guidelines. Everything outside of that is an implied no, right? And as you do that, as you humble yourself to that, as you submit yourself to that, like Adam was talking about yesterday, something happens. A light goes off. And you keep walking in that direction, and you keep humbling yourself, and you keep submitting yourself, and more fruit appears on your branches. So, I love you guys. Will you pray me out? Yeah.